Coming up on Network Africa. It's a new day in Kenya as 7 female governors are sworn in following the country's recent general elections. It's a tight race as Angola's electoral body tallies up results from Wednesday's general elections. Plus, Ghanaian traders threaten to embark on strike over the country's rising inflation. Hello and welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Layo Olarinde. History is being made in Kenya today. The 7 female candidates who vied for the governorship seats of different counties in the country have been sworn in. Fatuma Achani of Kwale County, Susan Kihika of Nakuru, Cecilia Mbaribe of Embu County, Kwaria Mwangaza of Meru County, Wevinya Deti of Machakos County, and Waiguru of Kirinyaga County, and Gladys Wanga of Homa Bay County are the female governors out of more than 20 female candidates who had ran for office. Well, despite women making up nearly half of registered voters, very few female leaders hold elective positions. The country's first female Chief Justice, Martha Koome, has appointed 45 judges to preside over the swearing-in ceremony of the incoming governors. Well, Uganda's former Security Minister, General Eli Tumwine, has reportedly died in Kenya. The 68-year-old had been airlifted to a hospital there 2 weeks ago to treat an undisclosed illness. General Tumwine was one of the founding members of the National Resistance Army, which fought a 5-year war that brought President Yoweri Museveni to power in 1986. It is believed he fired the first shot as the then rebel group attacked a military barracks and launched its bush war uprising in central Uganda. He became commander of the rebel army in 1984, holding the position until 1987, a year after he had taken power. General Tumwine had held several positions in government over the last couple of decades, including Security Minister and Deputy Defense Minister. He was also a long-term member of Parliament representing the army. Well, now let's take you back to our leading story, the female governors that have been sworn in Kenya. Joining us now for more is Kenyan journalist Abby Agina. Abby, are Kenyans excited about the change to the political scene, having more women in governance?
Well, today is an exciting day for the people of Kenya, considering the country has made significant milestones when it comes to mainstreaming women in public office. Today, we did see 7 female governors being sworn in to take over this very important role in the governance of the country. So the excitement is palpable in many parts of the country. We've seen a lot of celebrations indeed in these 7 counties, which we already know that the 7 female governors were elected into office. But over and above that, we've also seen a lot of counties also taking up deputy governors who are females. And this indeed marks a breakaway from the traditional way we conducted our politics. So majority of Kenyans are quite happy. They feel women are having a space on the table when it comes to public affairs and governance in the country.
Well, talk to us about, the type of campaigns run by these women in the recently concluded general elections and, the impression made on their male counterparts.
Well, that's a very interesting question. Most of the female governors, half of them are first-timers who have given a shot at this position. And campaigning for a gubernatorial position is not cheap. It doesn't come easily. The majority of the female governors mainly appealed to the voters. They tapped into their emotions and were able to convince them for them to be elected. Not a good number of them spent significant resources if you look at their budgets, because a few of them were coming from very noble backgrounds, where humble backgrounds, I beg your pardon, where they simply won the elections based on their messaging. They won the elections based on their uh, what they plan to do if elected. It was more about issue driven, and the female card wasn't that much of an item on the minds of voters, but it was more of what will this leader do for us? And quite a number of them, of course, have a good track record when it comes to development agendas. And this helped to catapult them into these offices. But of course, for the others who are defending their seat, they had to spend some good amount of money in terms of campaigns, in terms of branding, and also just supporting the party positions of the parties that they represent. So it was a mixed bag. Some used their appeal to the voters and their charm. For the others, it was also a gamble of spending resources and, of course, uh, endorsements from their party leaders, which helped them scale the heights when it comes to breaking the glass ceiling for women to be in public office.
Well, for these seven governors who have now been sworn in, I guess their strategies have made them successful. And I guess it's safe to say that, Kenyan women are breaking the political ceiling. But how do citizens, feel about the possibility of a female president?
Well, that's not far off, because women have continued to take on an important role in Kenya's political affairs. And without blinking an eyelid, Kenya could just be one of the countries to watch out for when it comes to having a female president. It's not something that one would say is impossible to happen in Kenya, considering that we're already seeing a precedent being set by the female governors who have been able to ascend to the high office of being governors. We currently, of course, have a duo in the Kenyan elections, where we did see one of the camps having a running mate who was female. And this was Raila Odinga, whose running mate was Martha Karua. We also saw one of the contenders for the seat, that is Wajakoya, as well as Mwaure. Both of them had female running mates. So Kenya could just be the next country in the near future to have a female president. And this will be indeed a significant vote of confidence in just the impact that women have when it comes to leadership. We've seen a number of women being re-elected, even in the parliamentary position as members of parliament, because the women have been able to advocate for very important issues. For instance, health issues. They've been able to advocate for issues touching on the girl child. They've also been able to advocate for issues touching on nutrition. And this has really been a big milestone for Kenya. And also from a point of where do we put our money? The women are better at budgeting compared to men, as research has shown. And of course, this will be an important observation to make, even as we see the seven female governors. How will they perform at the end of their terms? Will we see counties in better places? Of course, yes, because it all boils down to someone leaving a legacy, as well as making a mark when it comes to offering leadership that is very transformative.
All right, then, Abby Agina, a Kenyan journalist in Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you for having me as well.
Well, let's get to the election in Angola. As the National Election Commission has indicated, the governing MPLA may not have a strong lead after all. With about 80% of votes from the presidential election counted, President João Lourenço's party, which has been in power for 4 decades, has received just over 52%, while the opposition movement, UNITA, has just under 43%. Well, earlier, UNITA said that its provisional data suggested it was leading in the polls. Analysts had predicted a close result. Concerns are still growing over the situation in Ethiopia's Tigray region, with the World Food Programme accusing the forces of looting millions of liters of fuel from its warehouses in the capital Mekelle. The fuel was meant to be used to deliver aid. Well, there's been no response yet from the Tigrayan forces. They've yet to respond to the accusations, and it's coming after fresh fighting broke out on Wednesday for the first time in several months. The UN and the US have urged Ethiopian troops and the Tigrayan forces to restore the humanitarian truce. UN Chief Antonio Guterres said he was shocked by the resurgence in fighting, while the US expressed concern that renewed clashes could jeopardize progress made over the past 5 months. The chair of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, has also called for the immediate cessation of hostilities and urged the warring sides to resume talks. For the first time in 25 years, the US has sent an ambassador to Sudan 2 years after it removed it from the list of countries that sponsor terrorism. Ambassador John Godfrey arrived in the capital, Khartoum, on Wednesday, and he says he's delighted to be there, looking forward to supporting the Sudanese people's transition to democracy. Sudan was added to the list of countries that sponsor terrorism in 1993 after accusations that it supported Al-Qaeda, whose founder Osama bin Laden lived in Sudan from 1992 to 1996. In 1997, the US downgraded representation in Sudan from ambassador to the level of chargé d'affaires and imposed economic sanctions. Well, the US announced plans to upgrade the representation in 2019 and the following year appointed an ambassador. After decades of conflict, South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011, and hundreds of thousands of people moved to their new country. But years of civil war and deepening poverty have followed, and many South Sudanese have now moved back, while some were never able to make the journey to begin with.
Living in flimsy shelters made of wood and plastic tarp or half-finished concrete buildings, South Sudanese who've returned to Sudan are finding life tougher as their former country's economy tumbles.
This is so difficult. Life has become much more difficult than before in the South and here.
After decades of conflict, South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011, and hundreds of thousands of people moved to their new country. But years of civil war and deepening poverty have followed, and many South Sudanese have now moved back, while some were never able to make the journey to begin with. According to the UN Refugee Agency, there are more than 800,000 South Sudanese refugees in Sudan, and about 113,000 live in makeshift dwellings in and around the capital, Khartoum. They're no longer citizens in Sudan and struggle to get access to education and healthcare in their former country. Alisa Deng used to work as a house cleaner and enrolled her children in school. But illness has stopped the widow and mother of 5 from working. And with limited funds, she was forced to move in with relatives on an abandoned plot of land.
I am sick, and the conditions became difficult in the south, and there is no medication in hospitals. So I came to Khartoum.
With an economic crisis deepening since the military seized full power in October, there is triple-digit inflation and rising hunger. Rights groups have long advocated that South Sudanese have their rights as Sudanese citizens restored, but attempts to improve their lot have stalled. while most depend on aid groups for cash or food, as well as help accessing education.
Still ahead on the program. Innovation in Côte d'Ivoire as one entrepreneur creates the country's first locally made smartphone. Please stay with us for more details. Welcome back to the program. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is making a strong appeal for the immediate cessation of hostilities in Tigray. This is coming after renewed fighting broke out on Wednesday. According to his spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric, Ethiopia is facing its worst drought in the past 40 years, with 17 million people now targeted for assistance, and worsening levels of malnutrition are reported.
Also, the Secretary General said a few words about the situation in Ethiopia, saying that he was deeply shocked and saddened by the news of resumption of hostilities in the country. Ethiopians, Tigrayans, Amharans, Oromos, Afars have all already suffered too much, he added. The Secretary General made a strong appeal for an immediate cessation of hostilities and the resumption of peace talks between the government and the TPLF, with the full guarantee of humanitarian access to people in need and the re-establishment of public services. Ethiopia is facing a very difficult humanitarian situation, to say the least. The country is facing its worst drought in the past 40 years. 17 million people are now targeted for assistance as worsening levels of malnutrition are reported. More than 3.5 million heads of livestock have died. Over 24 million people have received humanitarian assistance this year in Ethiopia, including more than 20 million people receiving food aid, more than 3 million have received agricultural assistance, and more than 3 million have received water, sanitation, and hygiene services. Parts of the country face a risk of flooding in the coming weeks. More than 1.7 million people are likely to be impacted, including more than 400,000 men, women, and children at risk of displacement. In a positive note, a few days ago, on the 20th of August, 840 tons of fertilizer arrived in Tigray to support farmers in the planting season. However, we are very concerned for the civilians in frontline areas and call on all parties to adhere to their obligations under international humanitarian law to ensure their protection. And just an example of what the impact of the renewed fighting is having. This morning, on August 24th, a World Food Program warehouse in Mekele was forcibly entered by Tigrayan forces, who took 12 fuel trucks, tankers, with 570,000 liters of fuel. The team on the ground successfully tried to prevent this looting. These stocks of fuel were to be used solely for humanitarian purposes, with the distribution of food, fertilizer, and other emergency relief items. This loss of fuel will impact humanitarian operations in supporting communities in all of northern Ethiopia. We condemn any looting or confiscation of humanitarian goods or humanitarian premises. And we call on all parties to uphold their obligations under international humanitarian law and to respect humanitarian personnel, activities, assets, and goods.
French President Emmanuel Macron begins his three-day trip to Algeria as he hopes to end a diplomatic row that will allow him to develop his relationship with young Algerians. However, analysts say the North African country's leaders may prove hard to win over. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune wants solid investment commitments, which seems unlikely to be announced this week, and for Mr. Macron to atone for comments he made last year about Algeria's history and its ruling elite. Or for France, better relations with its former colony are growing more important because of an energy shortage due to Russia's war in Ukraine and has raised demand for North African gas, and because of growing migration across the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, Algeria wants to take advantage of high energy prices to secure big contracts and investment projects, as it has already done with Italy and Turkey, locking in revenues that will help it ride out any lean years in future. Well, Ghana's Union of Traders Associations are currently in a meeting with the country's state council to try and find a resolve to the proposed protest slated for Monday. Shop owners in Ghana have threatened to close their business premises next Monday to protest against the weakening of the country's currency. Well, according to Joseph Obeng, who's the president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, they are demonstrating against the government to show the extent of suffering about increasing interest rates and multiple taxes borne by traders in the country. Well, Mr. Joseph Obeng we tried to connect with Mr. Joseph Obeng to, get more on this story, but they are still currently in the meeting with the country's state council. Inflation in Ghana now stands at over 31%. That's the highest in the last 20 years. Well, in solidarity with the planned demonstration, the Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders, an umbrella body for clearing agents, also says it will cease operations on Monday. You can't read or write, you might just need to talk to a smartphone. Who can become your best friend? Well, an entrepreneur in Côte d'Ivoire has designed a smartphone called OpenG. With the use of voice commands, this device can respond in 16 local languages. Take a look.
An entrepreneur in Ivory Coast has created the country's first locally made smartphone, which aims to improve accessibility with voice commands in local languages for users who can't read nor write. The phone, called OpenG, went on sale last month in the West African country. It can understand commands and respond in 16 of Ivory Coast's approximately 60 spoken languages. Founder Alain Capochichi said he was inspired to create the phone after watching his parents, who are illiterate, struggle to use a smartphone.
In Africa, the problem we have is that reading and writing is not accessible to everyone. People can just use their smartphones much more easily by simply speaking to them.
OpenG's developers say they've already sold several thousand units after only a few months on the market. At an electronics shop in the commercial capital, Abidjan, customers eagerly tested various OpenG models using only the sounds of their voices. Lansine Touré was one of such customers who ultimately decided to buy the phone for himself.
Everyone as an Ivorian should have one because it will evolve. But to evolve takes capital, and it is us, the Ivorians, who must take up this initiative because it is just the beginning.
Capochichi believes such technology is key to bringing Ivory Coast's undereducated population into the digital economy and will ultimately encourage nationwide developmental strides.
We don't need to alphabetize people. We don't need to teach them to read and write. We just need to take them as they are and insert them in the economic life.
The phone is driven by a series of apps accessed through a similar interface to that of Apple's Siri or Amazon's Alexa. As long as a language is pre-selected, users can order their device to initiate basic functions like sending calls or SMS messages, or even initiate mobile money transfers by speaking in their local dialects.
And finally, on the program, rather on a somber mood, the former coordinator of the Presidential Amnesty Program, Professor Charles Quaker Dokubo, is dead. Mr. Dokubo reportedly died at a hospital in Abuja on Wednesday night. Professor Charles Dokubo was a research professor at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs in Lagos. He was 70 years old. And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.